morning. Welcome to Thursday Night Live with Aish New York and Aish Global. We are so excited to be joined this evening by my new friends, Ricardo Adler and Vivian Cohen, married couple, the brains and emotions behind this incredible film, The Lost Key, which I encourage everyone to watch. It's fabulous. Okay, so we are going to be talking about one of most of our favorite subjects, which is sex and Judaism. But as Ricardo and Vivian are going to share with us, and you will see if you watch The Lost Key, we're not just talking about that. We are talking about love and soulmates and intimacy and fireworks and the whole package synergized, because that's what The Lost Key is all about. So Ricardo, Vivian, here we are. One of many interviews I'm sure you've had where people are fascinated, intrigued, inspired, interested, maybe even skeptical about why in the world someone would get the idea to make a film and to study sex from a Jewish perspective. Because that, for many, many people across the world, and as we saw in your film, Judaism and holy books and rabbis with long beards would appear to be the last place that people would look for bedroom advice or tips or wisdom. But that seems to be what you have done. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in this journey, why you made the film, and what motivated you?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting us to this wonderful and exciting show. We're honored and pleased to be here. I grew up in a secular environment in Venezuela, although I went to school in the US as well. I was your typical college, guy, modern secular person. At some point, I got married. It didn't work out. We ended up separating and divorcing, and during that process, I realized that there was something missing in my life. I really wanted our marriage to work, my first marriage, and it didn't work. And so as I was looking for answers in different places, a good friend of mine invited me over to a talk that a rabbi was giving on marriage. And I really, really resisted the idea because I never thought, like Deborah just said, that a rabbi would give any kind of advice on anything relevant to me. But after really insisting and dragging me, I went to these talks and I was captivated. I was hypnotized by what this rabbi was saying. I really loved it. I thought there was a lot of very deep wisdom there. And then I made a first film on the Jewish vision of marriage. After that, as I kept journeying on this process, I realized that there was very little information on sexuality from a Jewish or a Torah perspective. And even though, and in fact, before I get married to Vivian, my second and last wife, I did take classes from the rabbi, but he spoke about a lot of things except intimacy. And so I asked him, why aren't you discussing this? What's going on? Where's all this information? This is a very important activity. And he said, rabbis tend to kind of hide it and keep it, low profile. They don't really discuss it too much. And so that's where I got the idea that maybe just like we had done this first film on marriage, maybe we should do another one on intimacy and get into all the nitty gritty. And that's really how the project was born. I realized that this wisdom, which is beautiful and very significant, had to go out there. It could just go out to the world and have as many people watch it. So that's where the idea came about.
But it's been a bit weird getting sex tips from a rabbi and then making a film about it and talking about this in public.
It is absolutely very weird. Very weird. But like I said, rabbis know a lot of things about everything. They are wise people because they receive their wisdom from the Torah. And so maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would have never thought to ask a rabbi about sexuality. No way. This is the last person I would have gone to. As I say in the film, I explored a lot of different systems, philosophies, but never Judaism. So you're right. A rabbi is not somebody who the modern world thinks of as an expert in sexuality, but they really are. They, as I discovered, and hopefully as everybody will discover, if they watch the film. So it was definitely a discovery for me and for a lot of people.
So you mentioned that you hadn't previously felt that Judaism had a lot to say about a paradigm or a path or a wisdom to great intimacy and great marriage, advice, wisdom, a path until it came your way. So how do you think that we can share that with the world? I mean, obviously you made a film about it, so you're definitely doing your part. But what about all of the Jews, which is most Jews, who aren't privy to this law, this secret?
Okay. Well, this film took us 7 years to produce. Excuse me. It took 7 years to produce the film. And one of the reasons it took so long is because precisely we wanted the film to reach a mainstream, modern, secular audience. We didn't want it to be another religious film with rabbis talking about whatever subject. And so we took great pains to obviously keep the film kosher on the one hand. It is a 100% kosher film, obviously. But we really made a lot of effort to make sure the message would reach anybody. And in fact, it's even reached non-Jewish atheists have seen this and they really liked it. They were moved by it. So how did we do that? So we accomplished that. It took us a long time and we had to use a lot of techniques and tricks. But, the film was in film festivals around the world. And film festivals tend to be, very secular oriented. They're not religious places. We were on Netflix. We did a movie theater release. It's on Amazon. So that's how we're hoping, to get the message out there. But obviously we need programs like this to let people know that this film exists. But, it's a team effort.
Do you have any idea how many people have watched or downloaded? I know it's like not an easy thing to quantify, but if your team has a ballpark.
We don't really know. I'll tell you why. Because probably the place where most people saw it was on Netflix, and it's not there anymore. It was a 2-year license, and it expired already. But Netflix doesn't give any statistics, and I know a lot of people saw it there. So we just don't know. But I'm guessing. I mean, it's probably by now, just adding everything that has happened, maybe in the hundreds of thousands of people that have seen it. But if you look at that number, it means we have a lot of work to do still. We want to reach hopefully millions and bring this message to as many people as possible.
That's amazing. And I think that, Aish, one of our missions and dreams and goals is to try to bring Jewish wisdom to the masses. And I think this is really an exciting time to be alive and an exciting time to work in Jewish outreach, because I think that the world is ready and that people are interested. People are searching. The world has so much information available, more information than any time in history. And yet people are starved for wisdom, I think. And I think that at Aish, one of the things that we really try to do is help make that wisdom accessible. And that's certainly what you did in The Lost Key. So just to transition a little bit from something that you said. So at this point now, possibly hundreds and thousands of people have seen your film. And one thing that I really found interesting about the film is that it's not just a documentary and it's not just an informative film, although it is incredibly informative. But what I found very unique, refreshing, inspiring, and interesting about it is that it's really very personal as well. And both of you very generously, openly, I'm sure at times maybe you think foolishly, I don't know, I'm curious. It's quite personal in nature. And you boldly share quite a bit about your journeys up until marriage, and then the ways in which Jewish wisdom has enriched your marriage and helped guide you on a path. So what is that like? I mean, just to be blunt, sharing your deepest, I don't want to say darkest because there's shame, but certainly something that is usually kept private is now available on Amazon for the whole world to see. And I also found it quite interesting that so many couples were able to open up, because what I was thinking when I watched the film is, gosh, all those people that are interviewed, their kids are going to be watching this, their coworkers are going to be watching this, their bosses, ex-lovers, future lovers, who knows? So how did you sort of have the strength to do that? And what's that like, having your personal life now public?
Well, if you keep asking me, I'm going to take the film down very soon.
I'm sure you've thought all these things before.
No, maybe I'll let my wife start and then I'll compliment her answer.
Yeah, it wasn't easy at all. I just gave birth to my second boy. And at the beginning, we're not supposed to be in the film because it was a documentary with all the information, and that's it. But then it happens to, to be more interesting if we are in the film. And I was like shocked. I just gave birth like 2 months before, and I was like, what? So when my husband told me, like, you have to see it like a very big mitzvah, that we have to help people, that the world has to see all the Torah is for everything. It's not just for Shabbat or the festivities, or it is also important to be like in the couple, in the room. And I said, you know what? Yes, it's true. Because young couples sees like sex is just a physical thing, and it's just like something you do and you satisfy yourself or your spouse or your partner or whatever. And it's not like that. It's more than that. So it was very hard. Then I saw it like this, and I said, you know what? Yes, it is a very, very big mitzvah that we have to be connected with our couples, with our spouses, and we have to be connected not just in communication skills, talking and expressing ourselves, also being together. So yes, it wasn't easy, but now that I can see the film many years after, wow, I said, it really makes me feel happy to spread all this message around the world.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What was the compliment, Ricardo?
She explained it very well, but the compliment is that just from a filmmaker perspective, we had a first version of the film where we were not in the film. It was just different. It was actually a whole different set of couples. And when we tested that film on different groups in different cities, it just wasn't working. The message was not getting across. It was too much of a religious sort of infomercial film. And so we basically went back to square one and we redid the whole thing. And that's partly why it took so long as well. And as I was remaking or rethinking the film, everybody around me kept saying, you have to get into the film because this is really your story. You're telling your story through a film, even if you're not in it. And I really resisted the idea for at least 6 months, I should say. And, at some point I spoke to Rabbi Manis Friedman, who's in the film, and I said, Rabbi, what should I do? So I sent him, he said, just send me some notes on what this would look like, what your experience was like. And I did that. And he said, this is fantastic. If you're comfortable, get into the film. It's going to reach a lot of people. So then I spoke to my rabbi in Venezuela. I spoke to my family. I spoke to my wife. There was a long and hard negotiation. And we had to, we had some agreements. There's some things you can't say, a couple of things you cannot say. I promised her that when we were editing the film, if there was something she was uncomfortable, we would take it out. And we actually did take 1 or 2 scenes out. But at the end, we were like the best example because I was making the film. And so, obviously the motivation was what my wife said. It's the ultimate objective of helping, hopefully millions of couples around the world to bring this beautiful idea of intimacy into their home and all the good things that it brings. So if you're doing this mitzvah, well, then you're doing it because Hashem wants you to do it. You're serving God in a way. And if we didn't have this ultimate purpose, we would have never done it. I mean, we're not doing it to entertain people. We're doing it to bring Jewish wisdom to every home. So now, regarding my children, you just mentioned that. Yeah, it's a concern. It's a concern. I discussed that with the rabbi as well. They're still young. They have heard about it, from us or whatever. When the time comes, we'll cross that bridge. I have some ideas, but it's a risk we're willing to take for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah.
But I think that what's so beautiful about it is that the world really needs Jewish amazing sex education, and your children are part of the world. And even though, it is personal, you're teaching your children such a positive message about how Judaism is such a sex positive religion, and that Judaism has so much to say about creating a path of connection, intimacy, oneness, pleasure, desire, passion, love, everything. And that's really what the film is all about. So I think one day when your kids are married, God willing, in good health, when they grow up, you've given them such an incredible gift. And, one of the ideas that that's spoken a lot about in the film is the concept of givers and receivers, and how important it is to understand the role, the function of both, and how they're both so necessary for achieving great intimacy. So I think, here clearly you guys were givers and receivers, because that's how it works. So I want to just dive right in about some of the content about intimacy that Vivian sort of alluded to, that it is one of the problems, I think, and, that the film addresses, is that there is quite a lot of media about sex. There's a lot of imaging about sex. There's a lot of talk about sex in the world. But it seems to focus on instant gratification, on mechanics, on, sort of like the hit is the high in and of itself, which we know is very short-lived. But you craft in the film a reflection of Jewish wisdom that presents so much more. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the secular notion about sex, romance, love, versus this Jewish paradigm of the infinite, what it could be.
My wife or I?
Either, both, together.
Well, I can start, again, from a personal and also from a filmmaker perspective. I mean, I think everybody knows what's out there, what media is trying to do, what they're trying to sell us. These first of all, ideal looking men and women, which not everybody has. And even if you do have a beautiful person in your eyes, over time, that we get older, we start developing these imperfections and so on. So the media they don't let you know that. They keep presenting this ideal situation of what the couple should look like and what love should look like. So that's a challenge. That, of course, it's a major challenge. And if you're married and after 10, 20 years and you're still watching these films, TV, Netflix, YouTube, there's so much content out there. And if you get stuck on this idealism that the media presents, obviously it's going to have an effect at some point in your marriage. If you had a bad day or bad week or whatever, you're having difficulties, maybe you start thinking, maybe I should look somewhere else. And also the media, in some cases or in some films that I remember seeing, they almost they make like an ideal situation of cheating on your couple, for example, or having relationships with as many men or women as possible. That seems to be an ideal that is sold by the media, by Hollywood, and it's very damaging to any marriage. So we tried to, I know we're a small voice now in the world. We're going totally against the current, And we're hoping that this Jewish message of connection, like you said, of intimacy, of closeness, over time is much more powerful than all these other things that I've mentioned. And it's just a matter of really, taking it in and practicing it, and for people to see the results. So that's what I think.
Yeah. And I think that, the real fear shouldn't be that your kids will see this film. The real fear that all of us as parents should have is that our kids are seeing so much of everything else. And one of the things that I think that the world really needs more, clearly the media and modern culture and magazines' obsession with sex is clued into something that this is a very natural, innate human desire for connection, for closeness. Now, unfortunately, as you alluded to, that's not what they're getting in mainstream media. And I think that one of the points that Rabbi Friedman made in the film, or that everybody made in the film, is that sex really should be, or could be, and not to judge, but it has the power and potential to be truly intimate. And one of the most common forms of sex in the media, of course, is pornography, which is the complete opposite of intimacy, really. So can you speak a little bit about why you think pornography is so popular?
Okay, well, before I do that, I just want to add to what you asked before, about the media and all that. And it's just an anecdote. I remember as I was making the film, I was growing as a person and as a couple as I was making the film, and as I was getting all this wisdom and information from Rabbi Friedman and other sources. So I remember asking him, I said, "Look, Rabbi, this is all very nice, spiritual, beautiful, but we're still regular human beings. We're not angels. So and when we get together with our couples, we want to enjoy, we want to have pleasure, we want to play around, whatever. What do you say about that?" And he said, "That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can go so much further than that. You can go so much higher than that. And the whole point of the film is not to deny that. That's certainly part of the encounter, the foreplay, or whatever you want to call it. But the whole point of the film is you can go so much higher, so much way beyond that. And that's really, and if you do that, then the whole activity becomes meaningful. It becomes a profound experience that really can transform, the relationship between the couple. So I just wanted to add that there's nothing wrong with sexual pleasure as long as we know how to channel it. Regarding pornography, I mean, that's such a hard question. Obviously we don't watch pornography, but I would say that if a couple, I do know, or I have heard of couples that use pornography in the bedroom or before getting into the bedroom. And, obviously if you're doing that, then there's something wrong. Ideally, actually, if you follow all the Jewish laws and wisdom and practices, you end up being very attractive to your own wife. And that's really the ideal. So if you need to see other people doing whatever they're doing on the screen, then obviously you're missing something in your own relationship. And the more you watch it, the more it separates you from your own couple. And like I said before, in some of these shows and porn and whatever, they show beautiful people and all that. And so, again, the more you watch that, the more you start imagining things that are not with your own couple, with your own wife or husband. So that's on the one hand. And obviously pornography it's all about mechanics, pleasure, mechanics, and all this crazy stuff. It's not intimacy. So it just draws you down. And I'm sure people that have gone through this, and got divorced or whatever, and maybe pornography was a reason, they understand what I'm saying. It's very damaging to the relationship.
So what is intimacy if it's not pornography?
Well, maybe my wife can come in.
I would say intimacy is working on your relationship with your partner, with your spouse, with your wife, husband, and looking for a deeper connection between the both. It's not just like having pleasure or having or being just together. It's like more than that. It's like trying really to be like one. Like that's the main idea. We are just one. So it's, yeah, I would say that it's like looking forward to be together as one and to feel it. And it's amazing really, because it's not, as I said, it's not just physical, and pornography is just physical. It's like something ideal, but it doesn't need a lot of work. And relationships, intimacy, a good marriage needs a lot of work. And that if you look back and you see all the things that you learn and that you apply, and that it's like amazing. You're getting every step, higher and higher. And yes, I would say it is the best to have a good intimacy with the person that you love.
Can I add something to that? When I was making the film and learning these things, I remember in one session listening to Rabbi Friedman when he was discussing intimacy and the idea that this is a merging of two souls, a male soul and a female soul. And I mean, this was just just blew my mind. It's like, what is he talking about? It seemed very abstract. But at some point I realized that, when you're together with your couple, everybody knows about the pleasure side, the love side. I really like you. I love you. I want to make you happy, whatever. But suddenly what he did, to me at least, is that he introduced this new experience, this new idea that a couple can experience. And this was new to me. So suddenly, let's say after that day, it was like a turning point. I'm thinking, whoa, wait a minute. There's a soul inside of me, which keeps me alive and makes me think and feel and whatever. There's another soul inside of my wife, and he's telling me that we're really one. Okay. Now you can, if you're a secular person, you listen to that. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. But what I want to tell people is pretend it is true. Just pretend that's true. I believe it's true today. Pretend it's true. And so when you're with your couple, pretend that these are two parts of a single entity that was one before it came into the world. And if you start relating to your couple in the bedroom that way, and you're pursuing this higher experience called oneness, where suddenly your soul or whatever comes out of your body in a way and it unites. This was a totally new thing in my life. It's like, what are you talking about? This is totally new. And this is really what makes it very special. In addition to the love and the pleasure and everything else is fine. It's part of the experience, but this is a new thing. And this is what we're trying to convey in the message, this experience of intimacy.
Wow. So it sounds like both in the film and what you're saying now, and from everything that I've read and learned about Judaism, is that the message that we're trying to convey is that pleasure is good, desire is good, climax is good, and this is all wonderful. But there's something more. There's something else out there that most people might not be aware of. And that, as Vivian so brilliantly alluded to or said directly, that requires hard work. And that requires, as Ricardo, as you said, recognizing that we have a soul and that our spouse, our lover has a soul, and that we're trying to build connection. We're trying to go for something so much greater. And it's not either or. It's not either pleasure or soul connection. It's both and higher heights and more possibilities and really limitless potential for pleasure, as opposed to the physical mechanics, which maybe, pleasure has a finite endpoint. And I think one of the things that Rabbi Friedman talked about that is very interesting to people is the mystical climax.
True.
That is probably an idea that people are not as familiar with. We're familiar with, a physical climax, but what does it mean to both of you to experience a spiritual climax? And is that something that can be available to everyone?
Well, we obviously, after all these years, when we've been married a few more years after we released the film, and of course, we've concentrated and kept working not only on our intimacy, on all aspects of our Jewish observance, and trying to get closer to God in every aspect of our lives. And so, what I can say about that is that I don't know, honestly, if what the things that I've experienced by pursuing intimacy all these years is what these big rabbis, these enlightened sages describe as a mystical climax. I don't know if it's the same thing. I don't know if I'm at that level, but I can say that these are totally new experiences, and if you're really focused on what the film says, and how to do it, where to do it, whatever, and what your mental attitude should be, you will definitely start over time experiencing these, what's the word, out of body experiences, which I have had a few of those. You'll start experiencing maybe a closeness to something which is bigger and higher than just you and your wife who are in your bed and you're just two little bodies in this big universe and this big world. You start experiencing some of these things, and not every time, like the rabbi said in the film, it's very difficult to achieve this every time, but if you work on it, you'll start having these experiences. And I'm guessing that this is what the sages call a mystical climax. And I'm sure they had different kinds of experiences, but hopefully over time, we'll keep working on it and we can do this interview in 10 years and I'll give you additional feedback.
I look forward to that. God bless your health. So I think it's interesting that you're bravely acknowledging that you have room to grow, that you are striving, that you haven't arrived there yet at an end point. And I think that that's one of the things that makes Jewish intimacy so exciting, because if you juxtapose this to the more pleasure-oriented, endpoint, orgasm-oriented intimacy that seems to be prevalent in society, what we might be finding perhaps is that has a half-life, has a shelf life. And that's where you find so many couples talking about sexual boredom, and you find so many people looking outside of their relationship. We know, of course, that infidelity, which is a much bigger topic and isn't often just about physicality, but infidelity seems to be a real reality of modern society. I think it's interesting that you filmed in a lot of it seemed to be in South America, where, and I'm curious if you can just share with us a little bit about what the pervasive culture of sex is like in South America.
Well, actually, we shot, it was produced out of Venezuela, but we shot in New York and we shot in Miami. I would say at least half of the film was made in the US, and a lot of the couples are American. Mm-hmm. I think we're probably the only one that's South American, but I think the answer is more general. One of the motivations that we had when we made the film was that they performed this huge study in the US a few years ago, and they discovered that the divorce rate, first of all, was around 50 or 60%. And one of the major two causes was issues with the intimacy and the sexuality between the couple. But the other finding was that 80% of married couples acknowledged that they had been unfaithful. There had been some infidelity at least once in their marriage, and maybe more. So imagine,
Sorry, 1%?
80% of the couples that were surveyed.
Of divorced couples or of all couples?
No, of married couples. They 80% of married couples that were interviewed, were surveyed, acknowledged that they had been unfaithful to their partner at least once. At least once. I mean, they actually said it. Maybe it's more because people are embarrassed to say these things. And so that was another motivation. It's like, come on, you get married, you make all these promises, in front of all these people, and then you're breaking. 80% of people are breaking the promise. So that was another motivation to do this. But it's, just to answer partially your question. But yeah, I mean, I would say, this idea of infidelity in the world, it's true. I mean, all over the place, really. I mean, I don't know about the Muslim world, but I mean, certainly in the Western world, and I'm including places like Japan or China, Korea, and Europe, America. It's really an issue everywhere, and I think that the media now is so globalized. It's just getting into everybody, to every home, and it's affecting everybody pretty much the same way, because we all have the same drives and instincts at the end of the day. So,
one of the things that you spoke about in the film was your frat days. I was also a sorority sister, and I went to a party school also. And I think that one of the real challenges to build, I mean, listen, those statistics speak for themselves. We've all read them. They're terrifying, they're daunting, they're overwhelming, they're depressing, the statistics about the state of marriage in the Western world, in my opinion, and I'm sure in your opinion too. And I think one of the challenges and what the film is trying to address is that it's hard to flip the switch from, party scene, club culture, fraternity life, sorority life, really starting from middle school and high school for most people in at least in America, in the culture that I grew up in, to then suddenly changing every experience that has led us until marriage, and then suddenly sort of trying to start over, rewire our brains and our experiences, and suddenly trying to build a marriage. And I think that so many people feel ill-equipped. They don't even realize it at the time, because when young couples get married, everybody gets married feeling that they're in love, hopefully, and everybody gets married thinking it's going to be forever, and they're sort of in the honeymoon, infatuation, in love experience stage when they make that commitment. And then suddenly, where are the tools? Where's the path? Where's the wisdom? Where's the education? Because as Vivian, so honestly shared with us, it's hard work. It's a long road. And especially if we want our marriage, God willing, to be forever and to be filled with lust and desire and pleasure. So I think the idea behind the lost key is that it might not always be intuitive, that there are tools, that there are keys to building that lasting intimacy, maintaining lust, building, connecting, creating a oneness. So I was wondering if you could just share, if you could summarize for us and for people that haven't seen the film, even those of us that have, what are those keys? If you were talking to a couple getting married or someone hoping, thinking about achieving intimacy, what does Judaism have to say about how to get there? What are those keys?
Well, I would say you have to manage yourself in order to find that key. For example, if you're gonna be with your spouse, try not to do it with the lights or during the day, looking at everything, because if you're doing it in the right way, as the Torah says, in the darkness, you're just connecting to the other one. You're not looking at his belly or his wrinkles or whatever. You're trying to connect.
Hypothetically speaking,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and for us it's even better that way for a woman, but you're trying to connect the person you're married to. And Bezrat Hashem, in 120 years, when all the kids are married and out of the house, you're just with your person. So you have to have those keys to maintain and to be connected every time. And the darkness is one thing that it's very important, I would say. And the other thing is, let's get real. Marriage, it's not an easy thing, and we don't have like a like a book with all the steps and everything clearly set into that. It's a work, like I said, in every step. And you have to have every day a very good communication with your spouse, and you have to connect with your spouse and your feelings and his feelings. And yes, if you do the things in the right way, all these keys are going to be great. Also, the mikvah for the women, I would say that is the best thing in the world, because you separate, you separate for 2 weeks or the period, whatever, 15 days or whatever, and then you come closer and you come connected and you come again with the one that you love. So it's like we are here, and in those days that you're not touching, that you're not supposed to have any physical connection, you have to work on the communication with the person. So yes, it's very important to watch the film, just to have an idea of how much you can get in your marriage that you really don't know. You have to practice it, you have to live it, you have to enjoy it, really.
wow. So, Ricardo, I want to hear your take on this, but I just want to, if I may, add to what Vivian was saying, that mikvah, and probably a lot of people watching this have never heard of the mikvah or never been to the mikvah or don't know that much about the mikvah, but that certainly from a Jewish wisdom perspective is one of the keys, one of the tools to intimacy. It's not in the film so much that I remember, not directly, but I did just want to add that mikvah used to be, like so much of Jewish wisdom on intimacy, not super public, not super known. I had never heard of a mikvah my whole life until, I was older and learned more about Jewish wisdom. And I think that is also one of the lost keys. And I think that now, like I said, this is a very exciting time to be talking about this subject, because Jewish wisdom is more accessible than ever before. At aish.com, you can read about every single thing you've ever wanted to know about Judaism. And there's so much there, so much depth. And Vivian, as you said, you don't know unless you know. And there's always more and more to learn. And I did just want to mention that we have a great resource called My Gift of Mikvah USA, where we have a team, and I'm one of them, of I think 10, 15 incredible educators who want to bring mikvah to every single woman, couple who is interested. And we have mentors, because it could seem maybe like a daunting process, or especially if you don't know about it, there's a lot to learn. And we really strive and we really try to make it accessible. And we have conversations exactly like this conversation, not with filmmakers, but we have this conversation with people every single day across the country, across the world. And I think that one perhaps barrier, and that's why I really applaud you on making the film, is that maybe people just don't even know. They don't know what resources are out there. They don't know what wisdom is out there. And it maybe seems like it's reserved for just those rabbis with long beards, or just those people steeped in Jewish knowledge. And what Aish is really trying to do, and is doing a brilliant, in my humble opinion, job, is really making that wisdom accessible. So we want to say to you, our readers, our watchers, those of you who are already tuned into Aish or not, we're here for you. And we, just like Vivian and Ricardo, were so blessed, and I'm sure you feel so blessed to have been shared with you, and you've seen and you've shared with yourselves how much it has enhanced your relationship. That should be available to every single human being, and we're here for you. Ricardo, did you want to add what some of those keys are and how they've enriched your life?
I do. I want to speak to the men that are watching this show, because my wife
A little louder.
So it's only fair, right, that we cover both sides. No, first of all, I was going to say also the mikvah, the family purity, this idea very briefly that the couple separates for 2 weeks and then comes together for another 2 weeks every month, is very, very powerful. It's one of the best antidotes to boredom, to sexual boredom, because you don't have it all the time. And I think that's probably one of the main problems, is that if a married couple has access to their partner all the time for many years, at some point something just breaks down. Just based on listening to a lot of people's experiences. So, and just a quick side note, just to answer your question, we did have this idea of mikvah and some other things in a previous version of the film, but then we decided to make it into 2 different films. So The Lost Key, which is out there, is mainly about bedroom intimacy. And then there's a Lost Key Part 2, which is almost finished. It's not out there yet, but I'm working on it, which covers family purity, mikvah, modesty, and all these other things that didn't make it into the first film, just because we wanted to give each topic, the time and the development it needed. So there's another piece of advice or a tip that I can give to men. It's not in the main film, it's in the second film, but that's okay. Just, what we need to do as men is not look at other women. Just only look at your wife. Only enjoy visually, okay? Only focus on your wife. And I mean by that, when you're walking down the street and you see an attractive woman, turn your head away. Just turn your head away. When a chat comes along your way, a video or a film you want to see, or somebody's inviting you, or even if you're at work, you have to be careful. Just don't look at other women. And it sounds so simple, but it's very, very difficult. And me, growing up and being like I said, a young, like you said, frat party, secular guy, men like to look at other women, single, married, not married. And that's probably, in my opinion, as a male, the most damaging thing that you can do to your marriage, because if you start looking at another woman and maybe you think it's only once, but then you see her again and you look at her again and you start seeing things you shouldn't be seeing about her, or imagining things. These images, they can get into your head and just simply destroy your marriage, because then you're thinking of another woman and you're not thinking of your spouse, which is really what you should be focused on. So that's, among the top, the top 3 recommendations I tell people when they ask me is just look at, just focus on your wife and enjoy her visually, and don't look at other women. So that would be another, piece of advice I could give.
Yeah, and one of the ideas that came up in the film is about, speaking of male-female relationships, is the giver and the receiver. Now, of course, we know in Judaism that to give is to receive, and that's why the Hebrew word for giving, natan, is a palindrome, and it works in both directions, right? But specifically in the film, Rabbi Friedman talked about being a giver is an obligation of men, and that it seems to be that this concept of giving and receiving is one of the underlying foundations of intimacy. Could you speak briefly about that, please?
Vivian?
I would te doy el puesto.
Defer. She defers to me. Well, I want. That's okay. That's okay. I have an obligation to
Sorry.
discuss this. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, this, it's an idea that we understand intellectually in our heads. Physically speaking, that's the way it is. The man's body shape is designed to give, right? And the woman is the one that receives in the intimate act. And in my case, the main thing I've done is simply to be aware of this, be aware that inside of me, there's a male, masculine giving energy that needs to give. And the awareness that inside of her body, there's a receiving energy that needs to receive. And that's how we were built by God. And so that's really, that I would say in my case, that's it, just having that awareness and putting that into practice when you're together, not only in bedroom, but in life in general. That's just something that helps you reach or work toward this objective of intimacy. And again, I'm sure there are people that have experienced this idea of giving or receiving much more than I have. I don't know about Vivian, but I do want to say, by the way, that it does run contrary to the modern idea that men and women are equal and 50-50. That's just not right. That's just not the way it is. And I'm not saying men are better or women are better. They're just different energies or forces inside each of us. And if you're aware of that and you put it into practice, it'll help you reach sooner this objective of intimacy.
If I may interject my own personal opinion on this subject, I think that one thing that modern society gets wrong is that separate or different has to be a value judgment, that giving is better or receiving is better. And I think that what Rabbi Friedman tried so eloquently to share in the film is that there's a greatness to being a receiver, and that it's not, 50-50, it's 100-100. It's both and that one of the goals of intimacy is for both people to be fully invested in the act of intimacy and in bringing pleasure to one another. And I think that one of the ideas that he touched upon is the importance of receiving love, pleasure, intimacy. And I think that the goal is synergy, right? That both parts of the couple are really, really enjoying themselves. And that's, like from a Jewish perspective, it's such a joy to bring pleasure to the other person and to achieve pleasure together. And that it really forms connection. And one of the ideas that that the film touched upon is how intimacy really can be the glue in a relationship. So one idea that I wanted to discuss is that he talked about how if the intimacy is healthy, it can help overcome other difficulties or other challenges in a relationship. And I was wondering if you find that to be true.
I would say yes, because it's a very hard work to find it and to be connected that way. So if you're fine and you're happy and you're getting what you need and you're giving also what you need, I would say all the rest and everything else can be managed like easily. Like as you said, men they are like rational, so they have to give in that way, and women, we are emotional, so we need to receive love and comprehension and details. So if you can manage and you can work on a good intimacy, I would say all the rest is going to be fine. You have to work on it as well, but it's easier. It's easier because you're really connected and your goal is still being connected to that person. So yes.
And I want to say that one of the ideas that blew my mind as I was making the film was this idea that was expressed by the Arizal, who is one of the greatest Kabbalists in history. And he talks about intimacy as well, quite a bit actually. And he said that intimacy is the soul of a relationship, of a marriage. Intimacy is the soul of a marriage, which means that it's the life of the marriage. I mean, it all starts from there. So just like a body, a person without a soul is like a dead body. Then if you have a marriage without intimacy, it's like a dead marriage. It's not really alive, if you will. And so what I understood by that as well is that obviously if you have a healthy intimacy, your marriage is alive, no question. That doesn't mean you don't have to work on other aspects of your marriage, like communication and, outside of the bedroom. But if you don't have intimacy, or if intimacy is not good, then there's no chance. There's no chance of the marriage to work unless you just want to live with a roommate, for 20 years or whatever. It's you need intimacy to keep this alive. And so I think that it's just a central piece or component of healthy marriage.
So I'm hearing both of you say that that working towards this level of intimacy and building a healthy, strong marriage with soul and with body requires hard work. And one of the challenges, I think, is that we live in a culture that doesn't really understand. In certain aspects, we understand hard work. Professionally, I think the Western world is very focused on hard work. But when it comes to complex emotional energy, it seems to be something that is lacking. And now, I think about the future generation. I don't know. I know y'all are in Israel and in South America, but you have Amazon, right? Or you know what Amazon Prime is, because that's where the lost key is. But we in America, at least, our kids are now the Amazon Prime generation, that they want something and it arrives the next morning.
Yeah.
Or a few hours later, we have Instacart, Instagram, everything's Insta. And to some degree, the concept of living an Insta life versus hard work and build up seem to be, I don't want to say necessarily diametrically opposed, but there seems to be a real gap between hard work and instant gratification. So how can we guide ourselves and the next generation to be motivated to put in the hard work? And, obviously there's this sort of promise, this hoping, this longing that the hard work will have the payoff of real connection and the foundation of a bond and a love, and a tremendous love that will last a lifetime. But how do you motivate yourselves to engage in the hard work along the way?
Well, look, I'm optimistic about this, and I'll tell you why. First of all, a lot of these young people that you're referring to, a lot of them come from divorced parents. Mm-hmm. And so they already lived through a very difficult, they probably suffered a lot, through the separation. And I'm sure they don't want that. They don't want to repeat that. They don't want to go through that, and they don't want their children to go through that. So that's on the one hand. I would say also a lot of these young people are maybe hearing from people like me and my wife, maybe like, hey, be careful. Marriage is not easy. Even if you're married, right? You have to work on it. So, maybe that's the message is getting across to them. But I want to add something else. This idea of the instant everything and instant gratification and all that. And I've seen this. I've seen a lot of young couples, they get married, and because they live in this instant pleasure society, it starts to get to them very quickly. After 6 months or a year married, they go like, whoa, this is not working out. Something is happening. Something is wrong here. and I've seen a lot of them start, searching for answers. They don't want to get divorced. They want their marriage to work. It's a good objective. But so I think the problem hits them hard, maybe even quicker than it used to when, their grandparents or whatever. So I'm hoping that, as you say, all this information is out there, and there's so many outreach organizations trying to reach these people. And, once they at least listen to them once, to people like you or Aisha, or et cetera, it'll work out. It'll convey the right message to them, and they'll be receptive to it. So I'm optimistic, and we just have to keep working hard at this.
Yes.
Because we're doing it to help people. This is for the benefit of everybody,
And nothing meaningful in life is easy, right? I mean, we're all aware of no pain, no gain. That, and I think like one of the ideas of the Jewish paradigm of intimacy is that, the mechanical instant pleasure approach might be easier. It might be more available. It might be quicker. It might be with less commitment. But as you said, what we're going for is the soul of a relationship and higher levels of intimacy and really limitless pleasure and limitless potential. So obviously that's going to require some effort, because that's what brings it meaning, right? You don't grow if you're not invested. I have so many more questions I want to ask you guys. Maybe we can do a part 2 at some point when the second film comes out. But I just wanted to end by asking a question that I sent this film to a when Aish sent it to me, because I wanted to hear what their questions were. And one of the most and then I said, do you have any questions for the producers? And one of the most common questions that came back to me was, what do you do if one part of the couple is invested in this idea that Jewish wisdom can improve a relationship, but it takes two to tango? So, and I'm sure people have asked you this question before, and couples have come to you. So how would you advise a couple where only one aspect, one partner in the couple is interested? And also, what would you say to people who are skeptical, people who aren't sure if they believe in God, certainly not, the Torah and wisdom? Like that's a lot of Jews today. So what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, let's be realistic here. I mean, just, Jewish practice in general, it especially when you talk about marriage and relationship, it really requires both partners to be involved in the practice and the attitudes. And if only one side is doing it, it's like, I mean, the analogy that comes to mind is like a bird trying to fly with one wing, and the other wing is not doing its job. So it's never going to fly. You need both partners to fly, to take the relationship higher. So that's I think that's a reality. I actually know people that are in that situation. I would say, and I've also seen people end their marriage because of that. It's very sad. But before getting to that extreme, I would say to a very skeptical person, just why don't you try it? Just try this, try it for 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, whatever. And do it, with an open mind, with the right attitude. And then, let's talk again in a few months and see what happens. That's one idea. Obviously, going to talks or watching films or workshops could open somebody's mind as well. And but at the end of the day, Gevora, I mean, if one of the partners is just not interested at all, I don't see how that works. You need two to tango. You just said it. Maybe Vivian has a different angle on this. I don't know.
Yes, you can be alone or by yourself in many topics in the Judaism, like, well, I don't want to keep Shabbos the whole way. I want to use just my phone. Okay, it's you with your phone. It's not the right way, but okay, it's just you with God. But in a relationship, yes, you have to be together in the same path. It's important to study together this topic, and like Ricardo said, you have to try it. You have to try it, and in the meanwhile, every step that you're gonna do, or every thing that you want to do, it will be easier also to do it, to grow in Torah. And I did teshuvah like in my real own process, and it is the best. Really, I talk to my friends that they are not religious, and I say, and they know me since I was a kid, and I say, please try it. It's amazing. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't do it before, because really it helps you in every aspect of your own life, and in the marriage, I cannot tell, really. So yes, it's better to be connected. It's better to grow together. It's better to study all the topics that you need to study to have a rabbi, or to go into the Aish website, sorry, and to read all the articles and to ask questions. Please ask questions. It's the best way to learn, to understand, to grow. So
I think
yes.
that's the greatest end we could possibly have, which is always ask. There's always more to learn. Be a growing person. Recognize that there is so much wisdom on sexuality and relationships and marriage available to us in Judaism. Watch The Lost Key with your spouse. And God willing, wishing you tremendous success with the launch of part 2. It should be in good health and at the right time. And, here at Aish New York, we're here for you. And if anyone has any questions on intimacy, on any of the things that you've heard this evening, please reach out to us, because we're here for you and we want to help. And I think, as you can see from Ricardo and Vivian's amazing story, that it has so enhanced, enriched, built their marriage and their life. And that's available to all of you as well. So thank you for joining us. I know we have more questions, and hopefully we'll have another chance to discuss this incredibly important, relevant, and intimate topic with you another time. Thank you for joining us on Thursday Night Live with Aish New York, and we look forward to seeing you next week.